500 years ago, a man who had been tortured, stripped of everything he owned, and exiled to a farmhouse in the Tuscan countryside sat down at a wooden table and wrote a letter to the only friend he had left. In that letter, he did not complain. He did not beg. He described something far more dangerous. He described what life really is, not the version your family sold you, not the version religions preach, not the motivational fairy tale where hard work is always rewarded and good people always win. He described the naked mechanics of how human beings operate and how the world devours those who refuse to understand it. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and the disturbing truth he encoded into his writings was misunderstood, softened, and deliberately buried for 500 years, because power cannot survive once ordinary people understand how power actually works. What Machiavelli discovered was not political theory. It was a diagnosis of life itself, and by the time you finish this, you will look at every relationship, every failure, every betrayal in your life with such clarity that it will feel as though the lights have suddenly been turned on in a room you have spent your entire life stumbling through in darkness. But hidden in the depths of his works is a principle, something most scholars completely ignore, something that can entirely change the way you approach the next 10 years of your existence. The Letter from the Dead, December 10th, 1513. A 44-year-old man sits in the Tuscan village of Sant'Andrea in Percusina, about 10 kilometers south of Florence. 14 months earlier, he had been the secretary of the Florentine Republic, a diplomat who negotiated with kings, directed armies, and sat across from the most dangerous men in Italy. Then the Medici family returned to power. He was arrested on accusations of conspiracy. He was subjected to a torture method called the strappato. In this torture, a person's hands are tied behind their back and they are suspended into the air until their shoulders dislocate. He was hoisted and dropped 6 times. He confessed to nothing, because there was nothing to confess. They released him. They stripped him of his title and left him to rot on his family's small farm. And this is where most people would collapse. This is where any ordinary person would surrender to pain, wine, and the slow decay of becoming irrelevant. Machiavelli did not surrender. In a letter to his friend Francesco Vittori, he described his daily routine. In the mornings, he dealt with his crumbling property. He argued with wood merchants over a few coins. In the afternoons, he went to a local tavern. He gambled with butchers and millers. During card games, he shouted so loudly that neighboring towns could hear them. It was humiliating, vulgar, beneath him. But then evening arrived. And this is where the letter stopped being an autobiography and became a revelation. He wrote, "When evening comes, I return home and enter my study. At the door, I remove my mud-covered and dusty daily clothes and put on garments worthy of royal and noble courts. Properly dressed, I enter the ancient courts of ancient men. There I am welcomed with love and nourished by the food that alone is mine and for which I was born." Read that again. A man covered in dirt, humiliated by fate, ignored by the world. But the moment he entered that room, he refused to become smaller. He dressed carefully for that encounter. He treated conversations with dead philosophers as the most important meeting of his day. And inside that room, without wealth, status, or power, he wrote The Prince, the book that would reshape the Western world's understanding of power, human nature, and reality itself. Why does this matter to you? Because Machiavelli's life was the first lesson of his philosophy. He did not construct theories about hardship from the safety of a palace. He wrote the user manual for life while life itself was actively trying to destroy him. And the first principle he extracted, the principle beneath all others, was this: life does not reward goodness. It rewards accuracy, not moral correctness. Perceptual correctness, the ability to see people, systems, and yourself without the comforting distortions of what you wish reality to be. Most people die without ever reaching this. They live inside a story where loyalty is repaid, effort is noticed, and the universe possesses a sense of justice. Machiavelli would call these people raw material used by the ambitions of others, not because he hated them, but because he observed the machinery of the world with surgical precision, and the world operates according to a logic that has nothing to do with fairness. That is the nature of the machine. In Discourses on Livy, Machiavelli presents one of his most disturbing observations. He writes that all men are bad and will only act correctly when forced to do so. Most people recoil when they hear that sentence. It sounds cynical, extreme, misanthropic. But Machiavelli was not making a moral statement. He was making an engineering statement. Think of it like gravity. Gravity is not evil. It does not hate the man falling from a cliff. It simply works. It is a force. And if you understand it, you can build bridges, airplanes, and skyscrapers. But if you deny it, the ground does not become softer for you. Human beings prioritizing their self-interest is the psychological equivalent of gravity. It is not a defect. It is the engine itself. When Machiavelli said, "People are bad," this is what he meant. Under enough pressure, every human being will choose their own survival before yours, their own comfort before your peace, their own status before your well-being. Not because they are evil characters, but because they are programmed that way. And the exceptions you cling to, the friend you believe would never betray you, the partner you believe loves you unconditionally. Machiavelli would say, "You simply have not applied enough pressure to test the hypothesis." This is not pessimism. It is liberation. Because the moment you accept this operating principle, you stop being shocked. You stop being wounded by predictable things. You stop blaming people for acting according to their nature, and you begin constructing your life on foundations that can actually bear weight, instead of swamps built from the promises of others. In 1494, Florence learned this lesson in real time. The city had been ruled for 60 years by the Medici family through a mixture of cultural patronage and financial manipulation. When King Charles VIII invaded Italy with an army of 30,000 men, Medici rule collapsed overnight. Piero de' Medici surrendered Florentine fortresses to the French without a fight in order to save himself. The same people who had praised the Medici family for decades turned against them within hours. Their palace was looted. The family was exiled. Nobody remembered the art they financed. Nobody remembered the festivals they organized. The machine of self-interest activated, and decades of loyalty dissolved like morning fog. Machiavelli was 25 years old when he witnessed this, and he never forgot it. Neither should you. Everyone in your life is loyal to the conditions that make loyalty comfortable. Change the conditions. You will see what is real and what is merely performance. This does not mean you should trust nobody. It means you must understand the architecture of trust. Trust is not a feeling. It is a structure. And like every structure, it requires maintenance, inspection, and the honest recognition that no material can withstand infinite pressure forever. The war you were born into. This is where Machiavelli's philosophy separates itself from every motivational speech you have ever heard. He did not believe you could become anything you wanted. He did not believe in unlimited potential. He believed in something far more dangerous and far more useful. He believed life was a war between two forces and that your destiny depended entirely on which one you strengthened. He called the first force virtue. This word has been mistranslated for centuries as virtue, but it does not mean moral goodness. It has nothing to do with being a good person. Virtue is closer to the concept of effective power. It is the combination of skill, cunning, determination, energy, courage, and strategic intelligence that allows a human being to impose their will upon circumstances. It is the quality that builds empires and frees prisoners, the muscle that resists chaos. The second force he called Fortuna. And this does not mean luck in the modern sense. Fortuna is the flood of blind, indifferent, destructive events no human being controls. Illness, economic collapse, the family you were born into, the betrayal you never saw coming, the opportunity that arrived 10 years too late. Machiavelli compared Fortuna to a raging river, violent, unpredictable, capable of destroying everything in its path. And here is the part that should keep you awake tonight. He argued that roughly half of human affairs are governed by Fortuna. Half, meaning half of your life, the outcome, where you end up, how your story ends, lies completely outside your control. No discipline, planning, or intelligence can change that. But the other half belongs to virtue, and that is where everything is decided. Most people waste their virtue, their real capacity for action, on meaningless things. Arguments with strangers on the internet, relationships that ended years ago, careers chosen to satisfy somebody else, habits that consume time while building nothing. And then Fortuna strikes, the flood comes, and they have nothing left. No barriers, no accumulated strength, no structure capable of keeping them standing. They stand exposed and pray the river will be merciful. The river is never merciful. Machiavelli's message is brutally clear. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control whether you are prepared for what happens to you. And the difference between those two sentences is the difference between a life truly lived and a life merely endured. Francesco Sforza understood this. Born in 1401 into a family of mercenaries, he possessed neither wealth nor noble blood. But he possessed virtù, raw, ruthless, unstoppable strategic force. Through years of warfare, political maneuvering, and brutal alliances, he made himself Duke of Milan. Not through inheritance, through action. The moment Fortuna created an opening, he moved. He watched, waited, and when the gap appeared, he attacked with a level of decisiveness that left no room for reversal. His success endured because he built it with his own hands. Now compare him to those who inherited their position, those who possessed power only because circumstances handed it to them. You will notice the same pattern Machiavelli observed throughout centuries of Italian history. Power that is given is eventually taken away. Power that is built endures. What does this mean for you? Stop praying for better conditions. Start building the internal structure that makes you powerful regardless of conditions. The task is not controlling the storm. The task is becoming someone who can walk through storms and emerge sharper on the other side. The mask and the face. In chapter 18 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are, and those few do not dare oppose the opinion of the majority." This is not a statement about deception. It is a statement about the fundamental operating system of human society. We live in a world of surfaces. People do not judge you according to your inner reality. They judge you according to the signals you project, your posture, your tone of voice, your consistency, the stories told about you when you are not in the room. And the terrifying truth is this: very often the signal matters more than the substance. Machiavelli says a ruler should appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious. And whenever possible, he truly should be those things. But when circumstances change, he must also possess the ability to become the opposite instantly. Not because morality is meaningless, but because rigidity is a death sentence in a constantly shifting world. This is where people misunderstand him. They think he advocated hypocrisy. No, he advocated adaptability. Consider Agathocles, the son of a potter. Not noble, no powerful family connections, no inheritance to open doors for him, no great name standing behind him, no safe system protecting him. He began life where most people disappear unnoticed. But he refused to disappear, and eventually became the tyrant of one of the most powerful Greek cities of the ancient world. Machiavelli discusses him in chapter 8 of The Prince, and the analysis possesses a chilling coldness. Because the story of Agathocles is not merely the story of one man's rise. It is the story of the dark nature of power itself. It is the story of what human beings are willing to sacrifice to reach the top. Agathocles did not climb using intelligence alone. He used fear, violence, human psychology. He did not advance slowly. He did not hesitate. Everyone standing in his path was either bought or eliminated. One by one, he removed his rivals. He observed every person capable of threatening him. And when the moment arrived, he acted without mercy. According to Machiavelli, one day Agathocles invited the leading figures of Syracuse to a meeting. People believed it was a political discussion. But once the meeting began, soldiers entered the room and the massacre started. In a single move, he eliminated the most powerful people in the city. That is how Agathocles rose. Through blood, fear, calculated brutality. And here is the disturbing part. It worked. He crossed the line people called too far. And he was rewarded for it. He won. He remained in power for years. People feared his name. The city acknowledged his authority. From the outside, it appeared as though he had achieved victory. But Machiavelli makes an extremely subtle and important distinction here. He acknowledges Agathocles' power. He does not deny his courage, intelligence, or strategic ability, and yet he still says Agathocles did not possess true virtù. Because true virtù is not merely obtaining power. It is carrying power without allowing it to rot beneath its own weight. That was Agathocles' problem. He seized power, but he destroyed the very foundation that could have made it sustainable. Because the methods he used shattered the thing upon which long-term power depends. Trust. People obeyed him, but they were not loyal to him. They remained silent. But inside them was fear. They submitted, but they were always prepared to flee or betray him at the first opportunity. And the greatest problem with a system sustained through fear is this: you can never rest. That is why, despite winning every battle, Agathocles was never truly at peace. He could not sleep without guards at his door, because he knew everyone around him was driven by the same fear that had driven him. The same way he came to power, somebody else could one day remove him. That is why Machiavelli delivers such a harsh but unforgettable sentence about him. Agathocles ruled, but he never truly governed. Because governing is not merely frightening people. It is making people see the continuation of the system as connected to their own self-interest. Fear can elevate you to the summit, but it leaves you alone there. And loneliness is one of the most expensive prices of power. The lesson here is brutally simple. You can rise through lies. You can manipulate people. You can crush rivals through ruthlessness. History is full of people who did exactly that. But the real question is not how you reach the top. It is what you became once you got there. Because when you rise with a false identity, you are no longer carrying success alone. You are also carrying the endless burden of maintaining the character you created. And that slowly consumes a person from the inside, wearing a different face in every environment, constantly calculating, never fully trusting anyone, living with the fear that the mask will one day fall. Over time, all of this fractures the mind. At some point, the mask begins merging with the face. The boundary between your real self and the character you perform becomes blurred. And the most dangerous moment is precisely that moment, because now you are no longer deceiving only others. You are deceiving yourself. Machiavelli's real advice is far deeper and far more intelligent than most people realize. He does not tell you to create a fake character. Quite the opposite. He tells you to become the kind of person who no longer needs to appear fake. Become genuinely competent, genuinely strong, genuinely calm, but at the same time understand how the world actually works. People cannot see your inner world. Most people do not even attempt to understand your intentions. They respond to the signals you project, your posture, your voice, your consistency, your behavior under pressure. That is why Machiavelli's real advice is this: create alignment between your external image and your internal reality, because the most powerful people are not those performing a role. They are the people who no longer need to perform one. Their presence carries weight even before they speak. They do not constantly explain themselves, because there is a real foundation underneath them, and people can feel it. This understanding becomes an incredibly powerful principle, capable of eliminating years of confusion from your life. Stop trying to impress people. Start truly transforming yourself, because at a certain point, real depth reveals itself on its own.